For everyone that's joined, thank you. Happy to have you here. This is the third session now in our three-part speaker series entitled How to Start an Aerospace Business with Limited Resources. Thank you if you've attended sessions 1 and 2. They went very well and got a lot of good feedback from those sessions. So after the conclusion of this third session, we'll probably be doing similar events in the future around differing topics. So if you have a topic that you think you would like to see covered by different speakers and different panels from AIAA, feel free to send those suggestions to me and I'd be happy to look at them and consider them. So this third session right now is all about leveraging your network for success. And so we've gathered some speakers, including best-selling author Jake Kelfer, who's all about leveraging your network and building your professional brand. And then also a group of 4 different young aerospace professionals that can help take the lessons and strategies that Jake tells us and apply them into an aerospace lens and into the aerospace industry. So thanks to everyone for joining us. I'm going to first go through a few acknowledgements. First of all, thanks to AIAA for the support in these events. And also AIAA is always looking for new volunteers and new members in the Los Angeles and Las Vegas section. So if you live in that region and you are looking to get more involved in a professional society in aerospace, AIAA is a great way to do it. There's a great large national network. And so if you're interested, please send an email or contact either myself or our membership chair, Aldo, and his contact information is right there on the screen right now. And then, so our agenda tonight, first we've got Jake Kelfer, and he'll be speaking for us. And like I said, he'll be giving us some strategies and tips for building and leveraging your professional network. And then when he's done, he's gonna do a quick Q&A period just on his section before he hands it over to this aerospace panel, which will be myself, Christina Nice, Khushbu Patel, and Jessica Piness. And we will be, like I said, taking the lessons that Jake presents to us and applying them into a more aerospace lens. So we have some questions that we're going to be answering that have already been submitted before the event, and also answering any questions live that you may have from the audience. And then at the very end of the event, you know, a reason to stick around all the way through is we'll be doing another raffle similar to our previous events for a $50 Amazon gift card. So stick around for that as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Jake Kelfer, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can just get a full look at Jake himself. Oh, you're on mute, Jake.
There we go, Brett. I appreciate you. This is awesome. This is awesome. So real quick, you guys, I would love if you could throw in the chat where you're coming in from and what do you do? I'd love to kind of see what we're working with, where you guys are coming from, and it'll just get us going on the right foot. So let's see as those come in. Let me just make sure the chat box is working. Okay. Okay, there we go. There we go. Cool, cool. So we'll be using the chat box a little bit, but it's been a long day and I'm sure you guys have had a lot going on. So I figured today what we do is keep it a little more story-based and sprinkle in a couple fun stuff, but keep it story-based, very actionable, very practical. And I have 3 main objectives for today and 3 things to share real quick. Is number 1 is I talk very fast. I'm going to bring the energy, I'm going to bring the heat, and we're going to have a lot of fun making this thing happen. Number 2 is I don't use slides. Tonight is about intimacy, you guys. It's about me and you guys really diving deep into our connection and really figuring out how we can be a better connector to create the opportunities and the experiences that bring us pure joy in our life. And number 3 is I'm going to give us a couple exercises throughout today that you can use as an individual or that you can take back to your companies or utilize as you continue to grow. And I'll wrap it up with a couple quick key tips. I call these KELF keys, and we'll be able to really get you guys some great momentum heading into your panel. So some of you are probably thinking already in your mind, you're like, wow, this dude's got way too much energy. And at the same time, he has the most beautifully crafted and well-groomed eyebrows you've ever seen. What's up, you guys? So look, here we go. We're going to get it going. And I'm going to give you a quick little background on me. just so you guys don't think I'm some Joe Schmo coming in here that Brett knows that is going to talk to you guys about networking. But a little bit about me is, okay, Ricardo, I see financial advisor. Okay, welcome, welcome. A little bit about me is I went to USC. I was a business administration major, sports media study minor, graduated in 2015. Following my career at USC, I started my professional career as an employee for Los Angeles Lakers with Kobe Bryant during his final NBA season. While I was there, though, I realized that I wanted to do more. I didn't want to be chained to the 9 to 5, and I wanted to start my own thing. So I actually launched a book. And when Kobe retired, I retired and I launched my first book. And it was a blessing that became an Amazon bestseller that allowed me to travel all over the country as a motivational speaker. From there, I really wanted to combine my passion of speaking and working with youthful people and combine that with sports. So I ended up creating an event for the NBA called the PBC, Pro Basketball Combine, that's now helped over 70 NBA prospects sign their first contract, including over millions and millions of dollars worth of contracts in 30 countries across the globe. And now my main focus as a speaker is to really bring what I call the feeling of elevation to everybody worldwide and to really help people achieve their true definition of success. So that's a little bit about me, but there's one key truth to everything that I'm going to talk about today. Everything that I've ever done, and probably every reason why you guys are able to continue to advance and continue to grow and level up in your life, is due to one simple thing. That's the power of connection. Everybody here has had a connection that's helped them out in some way. Everybody here has had a connection that's created a sale. Everybody's had a connection with somebody that's led to a date. There is nothing we do in our life at the true fundamentals without the ability to connect. And today we're going to talk about connection, maybe in a little bit of a different light than you might think. But this is the key to achieving everything you want, both personally and professionally, to live a life of freedom, happiness, and epic experiences. So the first way, and I kind of segmented this out for you guys just to keep it really succinct for you guys. And the first thing that I'm just going to dive into here is what we call the eyebrow effect. Okay. Now, how many of you, and go ahead and comment in the chat box, how many of you growing up or even now in your life have been labeled in some way? Okay. Maybe you were in high school, the smart person. Maybe you were the cute person. Maybe you were the athletic person. Like, how many of you have had that label? And go ahead and just see if you had that. Okay. Christina, short. Brett's had it. Khushbu, you've had it. Jessica. Okay, great. So I happen to have this distinction myself growing up, except I wasn't like the short person. I was the hairy person. Okay. And as the hairy person, when you're growing up, like I had armpit hair before the sixth grade. I shaved my mustache by the 7th grade. By the time I got to high school, people thought I was the substitute teacher. Okay. You could literally say I was a hairy beast. And I came home one day and I remember this. And I asked my mom, and I love my mom. She's an amazing woman. And I say, Mom, Dad, like, why did you make me this way? You know, thinking they had control over it. I didn't understand. And my mom looks at me and she says something I'm never going to forget. Okay, you guys? She looks at me and she says, Jake, you are a hairy beast. And I was like, Mom, what? Like, are you serious? That's the advice you give me? And she said, but, here's what I want you to know. Just because you're hairy and just because you see yourself a little bit differently than everybody doesn't mean you can't use this as a strength. Doesn't mean that your unique ability to have caterpillars as eyebrows doesn't mean you can't still inspire people and lead people. And as I think about it, I had no idea what she was talking about at the moment. Fast forward a few years, I'm a senior in high school. I'm walking down the street. We had just won a big playoff basketball game. A person comes up to me and my friends. We're walking down. It's a gentleman, probably a father of someone that we knew. And he asked me, he says, excuse me, are you Jake Kelfer? And I look at him and I'm like, what should I say here? And I was like, yep, I'm Jake Kelfer. And he looks at me and he says, can I tell you something? And I'm like, absolutely. What's up? And he says, you have incredible eyebrows and a great facial structure. And in my mind, I'm thinking, is this the moment in my life where I sprint and run the other direction? Or is this the moment where I say thank you because he was actually giving me a compliment about my eyebrows? Well, I thought back to what my mom used to say and I said, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And he said, wait, I didn't mean it as an insult or anything. Like, I'm glad he took it as a compliment. I actually work for Nintendo Wii. Have you guys heard of Nintendo Wii? And I'm like, okay. And he goes, I think you'd make a great model character for our Wii. And I said, wait, are you saying that you want me to be a model for Nintendo Wii? And he said, absolutely. So if you go to Nintendo Wii, you can now see my character with the big bushy eyebrows because of that experience. And so here's what I want to share with you guys. The first part of connecting, the first part of our growth in our life has to come from within. And sometimes the things that we see as our biggest insecurities, our biggest flaws, are sometimes the biggest things that make us unique, that make us have our own style, and that make us the most desirable person to be connected with in that room. This is what we call the inward connection, AKA the eyebrow effect. And when we can fill up our own cup and we can embrace our true self, we can achieve greatness in our relationships. Because here's the truth. When we work with NBA players, I tell them this thing. I say, you don't need every team to like you. You need one team to like you, and you've become $1 million man. In our life, we don't have to change who we are to fit in with what we think other people want. We need to focus on not understanding, we need to focus on understanding that not everybody will like us, but the right people will love us. And that is the game changer in our life, with our relationship with ourself, which starts the outward connection, which is where we're going to go into next. So before we do that, though, like I said, I like to do a couple exercises. And for those people that end up watching this after, they're gonna get a hoot out of this next little segment here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something that's called the selfless compliment. Okay, go ahead and comment here if this has ever happened to you. Have you ever had that voice inside your head that talks to you way more than you want it to? And sometimes it tells you the wrong things, or it tells you things that you know you shouldn't be thinking about, those negative thoughts, those self-doubts that's questioning you. And you say, oh my gosh, stop, right? But you allow it to consume our mind. How many of you have ever had that experience where you have that voice that talks to you way too much? Okay, well, the beautiful thing about that voice is we get to control what it says. We get to control what it says, and it starts by us putting the right thoughts, by us filling up our own cup, by us owning and embracing our own eyebrows, whatever that may be for you. And so here's what we're going to do. This is called the selfless compliment. In just a second, I'm going to ask you to do something that you're going to feel incredibly uncomfortable doing, but it's going to be something that you're going to remember for a very long time. I'm going to ask you to pull out your cell phone, and I'm going to ask you to pull your cell phone. I'm going to ask you to turn it on and swipe to the video. And I'm going to ask you to film yourself for 10 seconds, giving you the most honest, sincere compliment, and hype yourself up for about 10 seconds. You can make this a joke and kind of do it more funny, like, damn, Jake, your eyebrows are looking good today. Or you can make it more serious. And you can tell yourself, I'm honest, I'm authentic, I'm passionate, I'm amazing. And you just are hyping yourself up. So go ahead, you guys, pull out your phone. Make sure you're on mute. This would be awkward otherwise. Make sure you're on mute. And go ahead, swipe up to that video screen, click the play button, and film yourself, and just go to town. 10 seconds, go. I love it. I see you guys getting into it. And how many of you right now, go ahead and comment in the chat box, are feeling like, Jake, that was the most uncomfortable thing I've done today, right? That was the most uncomfortable thing. It is awkward. It is weird. But guess what? Every single one of you, when you were talking, was smiling. Every single one of you was smiling. And every time we do this, we start to smile, because we start to realize sometimes, let's put those right thoughts. Let's fill up our own cup. Let's embrace our eyebrows. So now we're just getting warmed up. Are you guys feeling the heat? Are you guys feeling this? Because I'm just getting going, you guys. Here we go. So the next thing that we have to understand when it comes to relationships is, once we take care of ourselves, once we own and embrace who we are, we can now start to focus on our outward connection. Okay. Now, I said my very first job was working with the Lakers and Kobe Bryant during his final NBA season. And when I was working with the team, I had an experience that changed my life forever. Okay. So my job was a corporate partnerships assistant, which basically meant on game nights, I got to pick all the contestants to do the half court shot, the meet and greets, the skills challenges, all those type of like really cool activities. I was geeking out over this as a basketball fan. Now, there was one night where I was going to go pick a contestant up. Okay. And I get ready and I go into this elevator, Now, it's just like every other elevator ride. I'm going to go down one floor to the court, come out the other side, take my contestant, right? But right as the door was about to close, all of a sudden a hand puts it in and the doors start to open. And I'm like, oh no, I'm in a rush. What's going on? And all of a sudden, Jerry West walks in the door. Now, if you don't know who Jerry West is, I'm going to make it very clear who he is. He is the person the NBA made their logo after. He is the guy the NBA logo is based on. He is a Lakers legend, Hall of Fame icon. I have a room in my house that my parents grew up in, or that I grew up in at my parents' home, and it's called the Laker Room. Okay. And literally there's memorabilia all over the walls. It's painted purple and gold. And there was pictures of Jerry West all over this place. Now here I am, a 22-year-old assistant with my chest just pounding, and Jerry West and the elevator attendant. It was just the three of us. The elevator attendant looks at Jerry and he says, excuse me, sir, what floor would you like to go to? Jerry looks at him and he says, court event level, right? I mean, he's Jerry West. He's got courtside seats. The person working the elevator looks at Jerry and says, excuse me, sir. He has no idea who Jerry West is. He says, excuse me, sir, do you have your credential? Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to step off because this gentleman, pointing back at me, has work to do and he needs to get down. And I'm like, no, he didn't. Like, is he really doing this? And Jerry looks at the guy and he says, no, I don't have a credential, but do you know who I am? And the person working the elevator says, no, I don't. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm gonna have to ask you to step off. And I'm like, this is crazy. So Jerry West is about to step off the elevator because me, an assistant, bottom of the totem pole employee, needs to get to his work, right? And right as Jerry's about to step off, I don't know what comes over me, but I just blurt out, I go, wait. He's with me. He's my guest. I'll escort him down. And then the elevator attendant looks at me and he goes, are you sure? I look at Jerry and I kind of like wait for that nod of approval. Like, what do you think here, Jerry? Jerry gives me the nod of approval. I look at the elevator attendant. I give him the same nod of approval. And we go down. And I'll tell you guys, the next 14 seconds was one of the greatest elevator rides of my life. And as we get off the elevator, I start to wonder, is Jerry West going to be pissed that that person didn't know who he was? Is he going to be mad that a 22-year-old assistant had to stand up for him? How is he going to react? And as we start to go our separate ways, right before we depart, he sticks out his hand and he says, thank you. I appreciate what you just did for me. And that is a moment that I will never forget because it made me realize one truth about us is that we are people. And at the end of the day, every single one of us has the same basic desires in our life when it comes to relationships. We all want to be loved. We all want to be heard. We all want to be complimented. We all want to feel valued. And we all want to feel like we belong. And in that moment, Jerry West made me feel like the most important person in the room. He made me feel like $1,000,000. He created a moment that would last a lifetime just by saying thank you. Our words and our actions, even doing the most mundane things, have incredible power over the people that we communicate with on a day-to-day basis. When we show up in the morning and we ask somebody, how are you? Do you actually take a second to listen to their response? Or do you start focusing on making your coffee in the office? When you leave for the day, do you ever sit with someone and just ask them how their day went? What was their biggest achievement of the day? Do you ever ask them if you can help? People will always, Maya Angelou said it best, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And when we talk about relationships, one of the most important things we can do is show a genuine interest in somebody else. A single moment can change the outcome forever in what we do with the people that we're around. And when you talk about leveling up your career, when you talk about starting your own business, when you talk about figuring out how to get certain types of resources available, it starts with how do we make somebody feel? Do we build that trust with them? Have we shown them genuine interest? How many of you guys, and go ahead and just raise your hand real quick, how many of you have ever received a text or a compliment that was out of the blue that changed your entire day? How many of you have ever been insulted to a point where it immediately triggered you and the rest of your day, that's all you could think about? Singular moments, singular experiences can dictate what we do with the rest of our day. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think of this. We have 86,400 seconds every single day in our life. If somebody takes away 10 of those seconds by giving you a negative thought, a negative experience, are you going to allow them to take the 86,390 seconds that's left away from you? No, you're not. If you had $86,400 and someone took $10, you going to give them the rest of that 83 grand? No, you're not. Unless you're just like the greatest person ever and you're absolutely loaded. But I'm not giving somebody who steals $10 from me the rest of my thing. It's the same thing when we think about our relationships. The words that we have play a role. The interest we have in others goes a long way. The feeling we leave in somebody can change the outcome and the duration of what they do with the rest of their life. So for our second exercise, I've got two little ways that I'm going to show you this. I like to call this one text, one appreciation. So I want all of you guys to think of somebody in your life that means a lot to you. It can be a family member. It can be a friend. It can be somebody sitting in the other room. It could be a work colleague. Do you guys have a person that came to your mind? You have the first person that came to your mind. Okay. And what this is it's called one text, one appreciation. What I'd like for you guys to do is I want you to grab your phone and I want you to text them. And I just want you to say, hey, whatever their name is, I appreciate you because, and fill it out. This is not, don't put, hey, this weird guy, Jake, is making me text you and tell you how much I appreciate you. I want you just to do it and feel it and let someone know how much you appreciate them. So go ahead and do that real quick here. Go ahead, use your phone. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to put some more things into your mind here that will allow it to really, really marinate. I was doing this once and there was this big burly dude. And as I was doing this exercise, he did not look like he was liking it. He looked like he was hating the one text, one appreciation, but he did it. I get a text 6 months later. It's from this guy. And he goes, Jake, that one text, one appreciation, I sent it to my daughter. It has changed our entire relationship since then. And we've been incredibly close. One text, one appreciation. Now, a lot of you like math right now. I love math. If you do this 5 days a week and you do this every week for 50 weeks for an entire year, I'll give you 2 weeks for vacation. That will be 250 people that you will have impacted their lives. All it takes is 10 seconds. Now, if you're in the workplace, we can do one text, one appreciation, or you can do what we call Gmail roulette. Gmail roulette is a hilarious thing to do. We've all had emails with people, and sometimes we forget who's in our inbox, who's in our address books contact list. Type in a letter of the alphabet, maybe even type in 2 letters. Whoever the first email that pops up is, shoot them an email and just say, hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing well. Happy holidays. Let's reconnect at the top of the new year, or whatever it is that you want. You don't have to invite them to reconnect, but sometimes it's going to be the greatest experience you've ever had. I would love to hear what you guys do and see the responses, because this is something that is really, really incredible. So if you guys have any questions as we go through this, we're going to hit our final segment here. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and I'll make sure to answer them towards the end. So for the last part here, okay, we've talked about inward connection and the eyebrow effect. We've talked about the feeling of elevation and our interactions on an outward connection standpoint. But now it's about bringing it all together for a team standpoint. It's called team connection. And this is what I call the we is greater than me mentality. Okay. And one of the biggest things that we have to think about in our relationships is it is not about being right. It is about being the best you can be for the people you can serve. And when you can come from a place of mind that it's about what you can do for other people, that is where the true magic happens in a relationship. That's what we call the triple win. The triple win says it's a win for me because I get to connect with you. It's a win for you because we're getting to add value to your life. And it's a win for every person that's impacted because of the conversation that we're going to have today. For example, Brett invited me on here today to be a part of this. That's incredibly valuable. I'm coming on here today. This is hopefully going to be incredibly valuable for you guys. Every person that received your text is going to be impacted today, and their whole day is going to be made because of that action you took. That is the power of the triple win. And when we think about ourselves in the workplace, whether it's in our own business, whether it's as an employee, whether it's with colleagues, whether it's with people that maybe we don't even like, team members that are on our team that we're like, damn, why don't they just ever do anything? Roommates that you don't like, that don't pick up the trash, family members that bother you and irritate you beyond belief. This is where a we mentality is greater than a me mentality. And here's what I mean. A person that has a me mentality is someone that says, what can you do for me? How can I use you to get to where I want to go? You're only focused on what you can gain from the relationship. A we mentality says, what can we do for each other? How can I add value to you? How can we help each other get to the top? If you know somebody is sick and they need to take off an hour early, offer to pick up a little bit of their work. If you know somebody's going on vacation, maybe help them get ready to go for their vacation, pick up one of their clients. Whenever we're in the workplace, it's about what can we do to help the team achieve greatness. And so I want to do what our final exercise is, okay? Now, this is a true statement, okay? And I'm going to be straight with you guys. Most people have a me mentality, yet most people would say they have a we mentality because they don't want to admit that they focus on themselves the most. And it's okay, because the first step from going from me to we is realizing that there is so much more when we lift each other up versus tear each other down. So what I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and take your hands and make an M with your hands. Go ahead and put this down underneath the screen because we're going to start it. Now your hands, and I'm going to keep mine here for the sake of being seen. This represents a me mentality. And when you're born and when you start your career and you start your life, you have a me mentality. And as you start to experience things, your arms start to raise. Go ahead and start to raise your arms. And at a certain point, you guys are all going to get stuck right about here. Now, depending on your shoulder flexibility, you might be able to go a little higher, but most of you are going to get stuck right here. Because with a me mentality, you can only go so far. But the minute you change that me mentality to a we mentality and flip this M into a W, you can keep on going. Now go ahead and raise your hands as high as you can. And it's so much easier. There's less tension. There's more height. There's more accomplishment. There's more joy. There's more happiness. That is the true power of we is greater than me. So I'm going to finish up here with 5 quick tips to build relationships that I've learned after coaching 70 plus NBA prospects. You guys ready? Awesome. Number 1, one of the keys to being an incredible connector is to ask great questions. Most people ask questions in hope of getting the answer they want. The great connectors ask questions that give them the answers they need. Number 2, genuinely listen. I want you to think of some of the most important people in your life with the best relationships. Are those people the ones that are always listening to what you have to say? Are those the ones that actually listen to your feelings and then respond based off your answers? Are those the people that listen with the intent to process, validate, and understand rather than the intent to just respond and only talk about themselves? Genuinely listen. Number 3, be you. There's only one you in this world, and that is special. That is the person you need to be 100% of the time. You do not need to change your communication style to please other people. You need to own your communication style. And when you do that, you will achieve greatness. Number 4, you never know who you're talking to until you know who you're talking to. Always give people a chance. Always learn something from somebody. Even if they aren't the person that will change your life, maybe they know the person that will. Maybe they're just waiting to see if you're going to treat them well because you know they have the door or the key to unlocking the door to someone that you hope to get in touch with. And number 5, always add value. Always add value. Share people's content. Invite them to different things. Be a part of their program. Support them. Do all types of things that help somebody, and anything that would make you feel good, do that for other people. Okay? And so those are 5 tips. And I'm going to wrap up here with this. You guys could have done a million other things tonight at 6:34 p.m. on a Wednesday evening, but you're here. And because you're here, because you took the time, and because I appreciate you listening to this guy talk for 30 minutes, I want to give you guys all a free Kindle copy of my book, Elevate Your Network. And so the best way to do that as a little token of my appreciation is you can, and we can link this up, but you can go to my Instagram at Jake Kelfer, just my name, and send me a direct message that says, hey, Jake, I was at the AIAA meeting. I'd love a copy of the book. Here's my email. Drop your email and I'll make sure my team gets it sent over to you. And then if you want some extra goodies, I got some other things. It's called 71 Things You Must Do to Turn Your Network into a Profitable and Lucrative Business. So you can grab that as well as some other free goodies that I put together for you guys, as well as other groups. So that's just a little something that I wanted to do with you. And with that, that's all I got for you. I'd love to open it up for a couple minutes of Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. Love your energy. Love you keeping it lively, keeping it fun. I'll start off the Q&A while anyone else wants to type things into the chat if you've got questions. But my first question for you is, you can come into any situation with all of the energy in the world, all of the good intentions in the world, and you're still going to find people that you just can't communicate well with. So how do you deal with rejection? And what are some tactics that maybe you have for dealing with rejection when you're trying to help someone, you're trying to make this connection, and it's just not working out?
Yeah, I love this question, Brett. Great question. It's rejection is a funny thing because it's one of the things that we fear the most when it comes to connection, because we start to associate our self-worth with the fact that somebody is too busy for us or doesn't want to talk to us. When in reality, the way we can look at it is every single person will be rejected as you continue to approach your networking, as you continue to connect. Every person will be rejected at some point. And we all have the same fear of being rejected. And when we know that everybody else will go through this at some point, we can start to become more intentional and learn who the people are that do respond, and also be able to separate that from how we start to view ourselves. And so when it comes to rejection, especially in the networking phase, is realize that there are 8 billion people in this world. If one of them rejects you, I promise you, there are a lot more people that do want what you have to offer and that will be a better fit for whatever your objective is.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they wanted to ask to Jake? Otherwise, we can move on to our next section, which will be taking his lessons and applying them into the lens of the aerospace industry. So last call for any questions. Jake?
Sorry, I would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
First off, Jake, this is my first time hearing you speak, and I love your enthusiasm. I love your energy. And I was very much able to sit back and really think about everything you've said and just kind of think about what I've been through in the past and apply to it. There's one thing I did have a question with that I've been sort of struggling with, and I'm still trying to master this skill. And that is the skill of letting go. And I wanted to know what your take was on that, and being able to maintain relationships, and say if someone has done something to you or you've done something to them, how do you master that skill of letting go?
So this is a very loaded question, and I'm grateful that you asked it. And so you can go ahead and keep your mic on because I want to ask a follow-up here. When you're referencing letting it go, are you referencing letting the relationship go or letting that experience go?
Letting that experience go.
Okay.
Letting an action go, if there's something that they wronged you on. So
this is something that is really important to realize, is that as we evolve as people, as we evolve to the next phase of whatever our journey is, okay? Maybe it's a new interest. Maybe it's a deeper dive into your career. Maybe it's a new relationship. There are always going to be times where people can't grow with you, or they can't go with you, or they'll make a mistake, right? And like I said, people will always remember how they made you feel. And so what I would say on this front is there are different people that serve different purposes in your relationships. And there might have been somebody that you thought was what I call a do-it-all friend. They are the person you work out with, you party with, you hang out with, you have climbed the corporate ladder with, that you spend a lot of your time with, that you talk about your relationship, you talk about everything. And maybe something happens. Well, maybe instead of them being your do-it-all friend, they slowly become your workout friend, or whatever their purpose is that still brings you great fulfillment, but also keeps your boundaries very clear. And so what I would say is realizing that not that everybody has a purpose in your relationship triangle. And it's up to you to decide based off your experiences of the good and the bad, where they go with you as you continue to evolve as a person, and as you continue to develop your beliefs, as you continue to experience life, and as you continue to create new hobbies and interests. So that's what I would say a little bit about letting go.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you. If we have no other questions, I'll let Jake sign off, and I appreciate your time, your energy. Really like all the valuable lessons you brought to us. And I think that this will go a long way towards continuing the conversation that now our panel is going to have on how to take these lessons and these tactics for building relationships and how to turn that into success, specifically in an aerospace career. So thanks again, Jake. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, guys. If you want the book, Brett, maybe collect everyone's email address, and then I can just send you guys all the copy. If not, no worries. But I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me. I'll talk to you guys later.
Sure thing. See ya. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again because we're now moving on to the next part of our presentation, which is, let me know if everyone can see my screen. Okay, so now we're going to have an aerospace panel of young professionals that are, you know, a collection of people that I've brought here because they've all been able to find success in their aerospace careers. They're all young professionals, and I think can comment really well on, you know, how to bring these lessons that we learned and turn them into success in aerospace. So with that, we're going to start with some just quick introductions of each of the panel members. And then Jessica is going to go last, and then she's going to kind of lead us into our discussion, our Q&A period with some quick information that she's going to present. And so with that, I'll start first. So my name is Brett Cornick. I'm the Young Professionals Chair for the Los Angeles section of AIAA. I was born in Thousand Oaks, California, but I actually grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and then moved back to the Los Angeles area for my undergraduate career at USC. So I majored in chemical engineering with an emphasis in nanotechnology. And then after that, I went to UCLA for a master's degree in material science. And so these don't, you know, jump out at you as aerospace majors or aerospace careers. But one of the things that I like most about the aerospace industry is that in order to have a successful working technology in aerospace, you kind of need an expert from every portion of engineering. So I was able to take my passion for materials and for chemistry and to apply that directly to what I'm doing now, which is to help create materials for aerospace vehicles, namely hypersonic vehicles. So my experience is I have 4 years of experience working at a nanotechnology-based startups, a few different ones. And with that, I've done a lot of contracting with the DoD and DOE through different SBIRs and other grants. I also have an experience from 1 year in cybersecurity consulting with a large global cybersecurity consulting firm. And I also have 2 summers of research experience at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So currently I am the head of technology at a small materials startup in Los Angeles that focuses on producing boron nitride nanotubes, which are this new wonder material on the nanoscale. And I personally really enjoy working for small companies and entrepreneurial ventures because I like people not really telling me what to do and being able to do what I feel is best. I like kind of the chaos and the fast pace and just how quickly you have to change your strategies and pivot when you're working with a small team as opposed to larger teams. So with that, I'll turn it over to Khushbu.
Hi, everyone. Can y'all hear me fine?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So hi, everyone. I'm Khushbu, and I'm actually a co-chair with Brett on AIAA for Los Angeles and Las Vegas. I am the stump chair. My responsibilities include setting up outreach events for K through 12 plus college students. So I've been working a lot closely with all the universities in Southern California in formulating different events and helping them grow through their engineering plan or their engineering life. So I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and I moved to LA in 2016 for my first job. Growing up, I always wanted to be an astronaut. So initially I used to be like embarrassed to share the story, but now I've gotten over it because like, I think it's who I am. And I used to watch, and the thing is I used to watch an episode of Barney on repeat, and Barney went to the moon. And I would always tell my parents, hey, like, I want to go to the moon. Like, and I would keep like nagging them and bothering them with questions about the space. And like, I would ask them just nonstop questions about science and math. And they were just so sick and tired of it that they decided to put me in different clubs to get me all the answers I need. Since I was in Houston, I had access to NASA Johnson Space Center. And so I participated in a lot of science clubs that way, as well as in my own elementary, middle school for like whatever science fairs they had, whatever like after school activities they had. I guess my first big dream came when I had the opportunity to intern at NASA Johnson Space Center while I was in high school. It was a week-long like internship. They do call it internship, but I will like to call it as a mentorship since it's more, it was less professional than like what you would experience in college. And we were able to like network with different engineers, with different scientists, and work on a mock mission to the moon. And it allowed me to expand my critical thinking skills from capturing requirements all the way to like designing a project and presenting that, which I found super useful and applicable to my future. After high school, I went to University of Texas at Austin, and I got my Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Engineering. And unfortunately, because I was not able to double major in electrical engineering or comp sci, I ended up getting a certificate in computational sciences and engineering, which sort of combined forces on comp sci and double E. And then in University of Texas, I think I'm humbled by the experiences I had there. One of the greatest ones that I still resonate with is when I had the opportunity to fly the Vomit Comet, which is just an empty Boeing 737 that allows you to experience Martian gravity, lunar gravity. But it wasn't a free ride. We had to do a project throughout the whole semester, well, throughout the whole year during my sophomore year. And my project was testing the combustion capabilities of a material called Vectran, which is very popular and used by Bigelow Aerospace for the inflatable space modules. So I had the opportunity to fly the Vomit Comet. At the same time, Elon Musk he had called for a competition for the Hyperloop pod, and I co-founded a team at University of Texas, and I led the full design of that for 2 years. And then I initially wanted to go get my PhD, but when I came down to like negotiation of like what we were going to do in terms of like how I can intern and how I can work, I realized that it was just not the route that I wanted to go to, as I wanted to not stick to defense. I wanted to actually branch out and go into industry and like at least have internship opportunities that way, which my professor wasn't initially okay with. So I started applying, and I got my first role at Virgin Orbit. And so after graduating, I moved out to California. I was at 3 years at Virgin Orbit. And at Virgin Orbit, I was the hardware in the loop engineer for avionics. My job was to, I'll talk about the role because it's similar to what I'm doing at Relativity Space as well, except I am doing a little bit more at Relativity. But essentially, this role allows you to, what I was doing is I designed the test system as well as developed it and executed it to allow our teams to successfully test the rocket dynamics, the hardware and the software prior to performing the milestone at the actual test site. So before you actually go to an engine hot fire, you want to make sure everything's working fine. And so I would create like a dummy rocket or a dummy engine and include like all the exact same avionics and like the same software and the same hardware, same valves, sensors, etc., on my flat rocket table and run these simulations. This allows us to buy down any risk, mitigate any anomalies that would occur at the test site. So we perform these sort of tests prior to doing engine tests or stage tests. Like before SpaceX did their Starlink test, they definitely ran through HITL, which they call Ironbird over there. So it's a very important test infrastructure that we run through prior to any sort of milestone. Besides that, I did help develop a in-house coding language that we use to write our flight software, which was super incredible. And I also work on providing any power and communication to the rocket while it's grounded. So so that's my background, but sort of touching on what Jake had talked about. One thing that resonated with me, like through this conversation, is like, maintaining relationships, being professional, at least like in the workspace, and kind of understanding like how people approach you, and like making sure that you're not like you understand and hear them out before you judge them. It is hard being a woman of color and a young female in the aerospace world. And I would say like the biggest takeaway for that is just show strength, and show that like you can like basically have your head up and make sure that like you don't let anyone walk over you, and like ask questions if like someone's not able to understand you, or like they are like basically like trying to bring you down, but you want to make sure you maintain like your positivity and not let anything bring you down. So that's all I have for myself, and if y'all have questions, please type them in the chat.
Thanks, Khushbu. Okay, so now we're going to introduce our next panel member, which is Christina. Christina, go ahead.
Hey, so I realized that my slide is a little bit hectic, but I thought that it was fitting, considering kind of how all over the place my career has been. But I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I went to USC for MECI. I did some research there when I was an undergraduate on zero gravity 3D printer for in-situ resource utilization on the moon and Mars. And that's kind of how I got into space in the first place, because I was, doing mechanical engineering. I didn't really know what route I wanted to do. And then I've been at JPL ever since. I started my internship 1 year before I graduated. I did software development as an intern for a year, and then I was hired full-time to work on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is the orbiter that flies one of JPL's, by the way, JPL, sorry, I'm all over the place. JPL is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It's one of NASA's centers down in Pasadena. And so we have a few orbiters around Mars, and we are often the ones that did overflights for landing vehicles. So when InSight landed on Mars a few years ago, we did the communications for that. And now I'm on Mars 2020, and my old friend MRO will be communicating with us as we land. So, but while I was doing that, I also got my feet wet in various other things, which I think is really fitting as far as this topic, because I put a lot of emphasis on not just staying within my group when I'm at JPL. I've been able to, just through friendships and through meeting people, through knocking on people's doors and just saying, hey, what are you working on? How's it going? And just being able to have like casual conversations about what we're working on. I was able to get involved in an anomaly resolution research study on our other orbiter that's going around Earth, OCO2, because we kind of drew some parallels about issues that were going on that were similar between the two orbiters, and I was able to help resolve that, which was really cool. And I also, just by talking to friends on lab and saying, hey, I really want to get back into software development, like, I'm trying to figure out what to do. And they would be like, oh, well, you should try and join this group. They're looking for someone. And so I joined the Mars Relay Operations System team, and I did some software development for them. And what they do is it's our own kind of internal planning system for communicating between the orbiters and the landers on Mars. And then I got over to 2020 a little over a year ago, I think. So this here's me with the rover in the clean room before it launched. And then that last picture on the bottom right is me on launch day as with my like special launch badge. And so now we're in cruise, and then soon we're landing on Mars, and I'll be doing surface operations. And then I guess I should also mention that, like, on the side, I'm doing product development engineering masters, specifically because I kind of want to get into this kind of thing of basically kind of starting up my own business at some point. And that is more of the route of turning in my knowledge that I've been learning, everything from JPL, into something that I can translate into later potentially, or that I can even use to help out JPL in some way. So hopefully that wasn't too all over the place, but that's my career so far. And the last thing I'll say about that is that I attribute so much of my success, or the reason that I am where I am now, to just reaching out to people and making friends across the lab, and keeping in touch, and just kind of talking to people about what I'm doing, what I want to do, and understanding where they're coming from. And so yeah, it's been very important for me to keep relationships and expand my network.
Great, thanks, Christina, I appreciate it. And so now our last panel member is Jessica, and she's going to give us an introduction and then kind of lead us into our topics too, with some of the information she's going to present as well. So Jessica, go ahead.
Great. Well, hey y'all. It's great to talk to you here from what is actually not so sunny Florida today. I'm currently regretting not having turned the heat up a little higher. But I really appreciate Brett asking me to be on this panel. It's definitely been exciting so far, even though it's a little later. I think our previous speaker really got us all revved up. So yeah, like I said, I'm coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. I have, kind of like our previous speaker, I've sort of wandered a bit, been a little here, there, and everywhere. One of the things I put together for these slides is, if you take a look at the map, the green is all the different states I've lived in, either for work, for school, for various internships, or when I was a fellow at NASA. And all the red states are all the ones I've traveled to, either for work or for conferences, especially AIAA conferences. So you can see that I'm just kind of a little scattered sometimes. But to get a little bit more knowledge about me technically, so I am also a materials engineer. So it was great to connect with Brett on that. I went to Virginia Tech, and of course I have to include a picture of the Hokie bird. I will say we are not a basketball school, so I really haven't heard that much about some of the basketball stuff, but we're a football school. Maybe not this year, but we are a great engineering school, and I really enjoyed my time there because I got a very hands-on education, which I think a lot of the engineers on this call will empathize with, that we're really hands-on applied people. And then I decided in my infinite wisdom that I really liked being hands-on in the lab so much that I went to grad school. I got my PhD at Southern Miss a few years ago, kind of narrowed down into polymer engineering, which, again, kind of like what Brett said, what does that have to do with aerospace? Well, actually, I did my dissertation on protective coatings for carbon fiber composites in low Earth orbit. So if you're familiar with low Earth orbit, you'll know that there are a lot of hazards we don't have here on Earth, such as really high energy UV radiation, atomic oxygen, other environmental factors that can really chew up the polymer matrix of a composite. So rather than go back to metals and, have all that weight, I was kind of looking and working with NASA Glenn, which is why Ohio's on the map there, to kind of develop some neat little nanocomposite coatings that would, help lengthen the lifespan of composites in Leo. So after that, I moved to Utah, worked for a couple aerospace companies out there, kind of large, more defense-focused companies. And then I came back to the South because although I love traveling, I do not love snow. I should have said I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, so you can imagine my cold weather tolerance is non-existent. But so I came back to the South, here to Florida, and I currently work in business development in a new space company. But throughout all my travels, since I was pretty early in my graduate school career, I have been very involved in AIAA, which is something that I'll talk about on the next slide, because I just think that it's a really invaluable resource. So like I said, my current role is I am in business development for a new space company. And I do a little R&D work on the side still. Got to keep those polymer science brain cells from getting rusty. But mainly what my job does and what I love so much about my job is that I get to connect unique technologies and unique, especially in my job, material science, with users and with customers. And that's actually a reason why I went into business development. If you saw, my career, it was, education, and then, research and my PhD, and then R&D. And I was kind of looking around after a while and thought, I'd like to do something different. I'd like to do something bigger picture. And so business development came to mind because I can still use my technical knowledge, but I am building, those networks, those connections, like our first speaker talked about, to help not only the company I work with, but help other folks, whether they be researchers, whether they be scientists, whether they be government agencies or corporate customers, get what they need from our unique products and services. And so, when I originally talked to Brett, he invited me on this panel and said, we're going to talk about branding. And I said, well, I'm kind of that old-fashioned engineer. I get the feeling I may be about a decade older than a lot of the people on this call. And I always think, oh, a brand, what does that really mean? Is that just something that's kind of out there and very tenuous, and I'm an engineer, so everything has to have facts and figures and everything with it. But I've been thinking more and more about that, and I do think that in some ways I do have a brand, and I think that in some ways we kind of all have a brand, but it just may not be as obvious as we think, and it may honestly not be that hard to build one. So one of the things that I have always throughout my career, whether it's been in R&D or in business development, have focused on is that I'm a firm believer that there's always a customer. And so my brand is kind of built around reaching out and identifying and making that customer happy. And I know you might say, well, I'm not a salesperson. I don't work on commission. What do you mean there's always a customer? But, whether it's writing my fellowship application in graduate school, whether it's writing proposals like I do now, used to do a lot of SBIR stuff. Now we do some other bigger NASA stuff, whether it is like in my old job, I did a lot of testing for folks, either confirming or denying the presence of contaminants and other issues. There's generally always something that I need to deliver to someone. And it's really important for me to keep that in mind, because it's kind of like what our speaker talked about, going from that me mentality to that we mentality. If I can just kind of go beyond myself and look at what the people around me need, then I can do a better job if I'm focused on them. And then that, benefits the company or benefits the organization that I'm working with. And in the end, I think it benefits me too, because I get to see the productivity, I get to see the rewards of helping the people around me. So that's always my big takeaway, is that there's always a customer. And that is one thing that I do think sometimes us engineers miss. We're so focused on the numbers and on the test plan and things like that. But we don't exist in a vacuum. I mean, I guess if you're in orbit, but if you're out in orbit in a vacuum, you're in trouble. But in general, or almost always, there is a customer. And so we need to make sure that we always keep that customer in mind. Now, one thing that I will actually disagree with our first speaker is that I think it's really, really important to understand your audience and understand their communication style. I work with a wide variety of people, whether they be, my fellow engineers at my company who basically kind of want to lock themselves in a closet and play with their robots all day and not talk to anyone. Whether it's one of my salesperson colleagues who will chat your ear off all day, whether it is a government program manager who just is really nice but doesn't have time. You have to think about who you're communicating with, especially if they're your customer, and how they prefer to communicate. Do they prefer a nice chatty phone call? Do they just prefer a good bulleted list? Maybe you really need to bring it to their attention what they need to do because they're really busy. Do they want a nice, well-written paragraph? Do they want, just a quick G chat because they might get intimidated? Ooh, this is an email. This is formal. I do personally think it's important for me to adapt my communication style to the people I'm interacting with. And I found that that's been really productive over the years. And although it may feel like, oh, I'm selling myself out or I'm selling my brand out, I actually feel like it's made me be able to connect more authentically with people because I can create a better and more genuine connection with them if I meet them at their level, or if I meet them, I shouldn't really say at their level, but if I meet them in the way that's most comfortable for them. That's how I see that I get the best results and how I get that good, deep connection. So I personally think that it's important to adapt your communication style to who you're communicating with, especially if it is one of those internal or external customers. Like I said, I've been involved in AIAA for probably about 6 years now. AIAA is one of the places where I do go and look for connections, both connections on a business level, on a technological level. I'm very involved in the AIAA Materials TC. If you're not familiar with technical committees, these are national organizations, or groups at the national level in AIAA that help plan AIAA conferences and technical sessions. And as a materials engineer, it's always been my mission to make materials engineering more recognized and more valued in the aerospace community. And so that's part of what I love to do with the materials TC. But I've also built some really great networking connections and some really great personal connections, actually, through AIAA. The whole reason why actually I'm on this panel is because a friend of Brett said to me, hey, I have this friend, he's doing this panel, would you like to be on it? And I said, sure, you're a good friend of mine, I'll do that for you. And so I find that having that professional society where it's not necessarily about it, making a sale or writing a grant, having that society where we can just come together and talk about the technology and talk about the industry really helps us build a very unique connection as AIAA members. And so that's why I do encourage you, and I'm sure your chair would love to hear me say this, pay your membership, get involved. It is worth it, trust me. So just a couple other things before we get to the panel, and I hope I haven't gone too long. But I know that our previous speaker did talk a lot about, being yourself and not changing yourself. And I think that's something that I want to echo. I am a queer person in engineering, which is not always the most hospitable place. But I do think that it's very important to be myself in the workplace and to be myself in AIAA. But I think it's also important for me to recognize who I'm not. For example, I like to joke I am whiter than white. I am also very economically privileged and very educationally privileged. And I just want to challenge each person on this call to think about the privileges they have, to think about who they are, to think about their life's experiences, um, and where they came from, because I think that that's what kind of makes us all richer as a community. I know for on the materials TC, when we try and put together events, we do try and have a relatively diverse list of speakers, for example, on the panel that we put together each year at SciTech. And I do want to point out this quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes from Audre Lorde, who everyone should be familiar with. It is not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And I think that's really important, because it's not just about, oh, I went to this school here, or I come from here, or I was, I'm from Charleston, you're from LA. It really is about our own unique perspectives. And I don't think we give folks enough credit in aerospace, in the community. When we talk about diversity, we often talk about it as something nice to have. But I think if we can really, I would challenge each person to really center that, think about their privilege, think about what makes them unique, and how to accept and celebrate their differences and other folks' differences. And then finally, I guess the last thing I would say in terms of my brand, and my sort of career is that I have never been a person, and this has taken a while for me to adjust to. I have never been a person who has been able to pull an all-nighter or has ever been able to work nonstop. And I used to feel very ashamed about that, but I've recognized over the years, especially over the past couple of years, that self-care is really important. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but getting a good night's sleep, especially now that we're all working from home, actually shutting your laptop off at the end of the day, is really, really important. And so I want to also challenge folks to think about what they can do to recharge themselves. I put a picture, and I recognize I'm very economically privileged to be able to travel, but I put a picture on here of Glacier National Park, which is my favorite place in the world to travel to. And I just find that, yeah, okay, maybe I'm putting some emails off. Yeah, maybe I'm putting a project off. I'm not working that long weekend. I go up to Glacier or something. But the amazingness of my surroundings, the getting out in nature, the just relaxing, honestly helps me and makes me a much more productive person. So I would encourage you don't sacrifice, your long-term well-being for those short-term gains in productivity, because eventually it will come back to bite you, and then you will not be as effective at some of the other things like the communication, like the paying attention to your customers, as you wish you would be. So I know that was long. I've talked at you for a little while, but I hope that was helpful, and I can't wait to see what questions y'all have.
That was great. Thank you so much, Jessica, and thanks to the other panel members as well. I think that was a really good introduction to lead into our Q&A period now, which I do have some questions that were submitted to me from some different people that RSVP'd for the event prior to the event. And then also, if you have any questions and you're attending right now, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll address those as well. So the first question, I'm just going to ask these to the panel in general, and if you'd like to speak up on it, just jump right in. The first one is to just, if you could recount an experience where a connection in your network specifically opened an opportunity for you that otherwise would not have happened, and maybe just recount how that happened and how that connection was made, and yeah, anything that goes along with that fits in with our theme. So I can start first while our other panel members think about this one. For me personally, one of my favorite experiences that I've had in my career was I was able to spend 2 separate summers at Lawrence Livermore National Lab in the Bay Area, and that laboratory does some of just the coolest things in the world that could possibly happen on Earth. I swear. They have this one facility that's the most energetic laser in the world, and they use that to model and simulate what goes on inside of stars and atomic explosions, and basically model fusion for nanoseconds at a time. And it's this great big facility that focuses this huge, hugely energetic laser onto this tiny little section of particles. And the engineering that goes behind it is just, it's beyond fathoming, to be honest. And so I love that experience, and that experience never would have happened for me if it weren't for a connection that I had made in my network. And that was just that my advisor for my university degree, he was a former employee at Lawrence Livermore National Lab before he moved on to UCLA. And it was while I was doing work with him where I started to express what my interests were. And he's like, oh, well, that sounds very similar to the work that I was doing up at this national lab. Let me see if they have any need for a summer intern or a summer student for a couple summers for you. And turns out they did. It was very easy for him to just open that door for me. And it was just an example of where if I had never expressed to him what I was interested in, what I wanted to do, and what my goals were, that door would have never been open to me. So you kind of have to put yourself out there before anything will ever come your way, if that makes sense. So any other panel members, if you want to speak on this, go ahead.
I have one. Is at the very beginning of my career, so this might be helpful in a lot of ways. When I was just kind of deciding that I was getting into aerospace, I mean, I've always been very excited about it, but I was just, I guess, excited about it. I was like at a party and talking to one of my friends about it or something like that. And he said, oh, I have an uncle that works at JPL that, that's pretty cool. And I was like, no way. Like, do you think I could talk to him? And he was like, yeah, I'll set up an email. And that single connection is the reason why I ended up at JPL, because I emailed him back and I said, hey, like, I'm really interested. I'm wondering how I might be able to get an internship. And I actually ended up emailing him like 3 times in a row before he got back to me over some series of months. And then he said, sure, I think I know someone. You should talk to this person, who ended up being my supervisor for my my internship. And I suppose the moral of that story is, if you're simply talking about what you're passionate about, then people will pick up on that and be like, oh, I have this connection. Or if they can sense your excitement and your energy, they are, I think, more willing to kind of put their resources out there and be like, hey, maybe you should try this, or I'd be happy to introduce you. And then the other lesson out of that is to be persistent. Once you do make the connection, don't just let it fizzle.
Yeah, I'd actually like to add on to that. I think being persistent is amazing. My last internship between undergrad and grad school, I was doing a lot of really regimented testing. So it would be like I'd be in the lab for an hour, just like flying around. And then I'd sit there for 3 hours waiting for, the next test to start. And because I'm not good at sitting still, I ended up going around in this company that I was working at and just randomly introducing myself to people and literally scheduling meetings with them if they didn't want to sit down and talk to me. Because I was like, I want to know what you do. I want to know why you do it. I want to know how you got there. And fortunately, people were really friendly, but it really opened my eyes to kind of the whole breadth of different kinds of engineering applications in my field alone. I mean, I know I say material science, but there's so much you can do in material science. And it really helped me too, just by being unafraid to go out there and knock on doors and get to know people, kind of like what Christina said. Sometimes you just have to bug people, but it's worth it. And it really paid off for me to help me understand where I wanted, my career to go. So yeah, definitely talk about your passion and don't be afraid to express your passion, whether you're talking to someone or whether you're like me and you were just really bored and needed something to do.
Awesome, thank you. So we can go on to our next question then. And So this question is great because it actually touches a bit on something that our first speaker, Jake, had mentioned. He was talking a bit about, always try to make sure you're creating value in these relationships and try to create, win-win situations. And so one of these questions actually mentions that, and, what are some tips for creating a win-win situation when you're networking with something? How do I offer help to someone that I may want to add to my network without it seeming forced or awkward? And so I've definitely experienced this in the past, especially if your first introduction with someone is, say, online over like LinkedIn or some web chat. Without the personal connection, it's a little bit more different. But we're all working in that world right now. And so really what I've done in the past is I've looked at, okay, what are my skills and how can I quickly apply that to something that they're doing? So one of my favorite things to do personally to help build value in a relationship is, if I'm working with someone I want to build a connection with, one of the things I offer is to review, say, a proposal or a report or some kind of technical writing that they've got, because I know that I'm a fairly good technical writer. I also have a lot of experience writing grant proposals and SBIR proposals. And that's something that, while it can add a whole lot of value to the person you're doing it for, it doesn't actually take a whole lot of your time to just read something over, provide comments and feedback. And lots of times people really do appreciate the outside third party feedback on something that maybe they've had ruminating in their head for a really long time. So that's one of my favorite things to do, to offer to other people that I want to connect with, that I want to build a relationship with, to make sure that I'm creating value. And it doesn't take much time, and it's always gotten a very good response. So if any of the other speakers, I don't know if anyone else has something else they want to say on that, go for it. All right, no problem.
I was about to say, I guess
Yeah.
I don't want to talk over folks, but I know, to get very meta, one of the things that I like to do, especially at AIAA, is I love to introduce people to each other. If I meet someone and they're working on something, it's, oh, great. Have you heard about, the chair of the materials TC? He does something similar. Or have you heard about my friend at this startup company? I'd love to get you together. And so maybe even if it's cheating a little bit, but maybe even if you personally can't provide that value, you can at least help them network. And then they can hopefully see you as a stronger part of their network, excuse me.
Perfect. That I totally agree. Thank you. So we really only have time for just a couple more questions. Then we have to do our raffle at the end to wrap up by the bottom of the hour. But question here is how is networking professionally or networking in the aerospace industry maybe unique or different from other industries or personal networking, or maybe some of the lessons that we had learned from our first speaker, Jake? How is the aerospace industry maybe specifically different or unique, or what are some tactics that you would use that would be different from your personal networking strategies? So I can start again here. My first piece of advice is, when I'm talking about my personal network and my friends and whatnot, I'm not afraid to say no to something that I don't want to do or that doesn't interest me. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. That's my personal network. Professionally, and working with aerospace, and especially if I get an offer or an opportunity that comes up to do something, or to at least have a conversation to learn about something, I try to never say no to that opportunity, because even if it's something that seems like a sales call for something that wouldn't be all that relevant to what you're working on, so often things like that can lead to introductions to people that are working in a relevant space. And I think a lot of that has to do with what Jessica was just saying, where a lot of people try to build value and provide value by providing these introductions. And so, if you're willing to just say yes to a conversation or say yes to an opportunity Usually, initial talks usually don't take much of your time and can really lead somewhere that you maybe didn't expect it to lead. So I always try to never say no, and that has definitely opened some doors for me. And if anyone else wants to contribute on that, go for it. Otherwise, we have one more question we can get to before the end. Should I do this last question?
So there were like two questions in the previous question, right? It was, how's it different? And then what was the second part?
Yeah, so how would networking in the aerospace industry be different from your personal networking tactics? And, what are some maybe different strategies from what you would take for personally?
I feel like, I don't know, at least comparing my networking to maybe people in like the business world or even accounting, like when I talk to my friends that are in accounting or something like that, I am in specifically, like government funding, lots of red tape, kind of very by the books industry. And I think that's probably very common across aerospace because a lot of aerospace companies get contracting out from like NASA, for example. And so, and in addition to that, aerospace companies also have the additional red tape of, when you put something into space, there are regulations associated with that. So the government's going to be involved probably. And in that way, I think that it is obviously different in that, in business or in wherever else, other industries, it's, I don't want to say more dry, but a little bit more kind of very much more focused on like technical and maybe less on, I don't know. Are you
less on building a rapport?
Probably answer that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that rapport is not important, but I would just say that there's extra kind of like red tape type things involved in that. But go ahead, Khushbu.
Yeah, I can touch on that. And it's kind of funny because at least the places I've interviewed and I worked at is corporate versus startup nature. I worked for NASA. I worked for a NASA contractor. And then I worked for two startups where one actually turned corporate. So I've sort of seen like the changes in the interview structures, the way you network. And I agree to Christina that when you're going towards more of like NASA oriented government like companies, there are more red tapes and there are ways like the networking is a little bit different because you also have to like during the interview process, right? It's a lot more different. It's a lot more rigorous. There's a lot more background checks. There's a lot more of like them knowing your network, like through LinkedIn. They even go through social media. It's just like a different nature of beast and like the way they ask you questions and just the whole process versus like a typical startup that it's more technical and it's more lax in like how they operate as well. There was a key point in that question that I wanted to address, and I forgot the question again because there's so many questions in that one question.
Yeah, just how is networking in the aerospace industry unique or different from other industries, if at all, and what tactics would you use?
Sure. I would say that like, so having, obviously prior to my first job, I did interview a lot. I did interview with Google. I went through the process of interviewing with Google, Apple, Snapchat, and even some like big four companies because I wanted to work on the technology aspect. If I didn't feel like doing aerospace, I just like test out the waters. The main difference I did see is it's more of like the interviewer themselves, right? Like the way that they come off like during that process. There's similarities in the sense that like you go through your technical interviews and you go through like your group interviews, like coming to the office and like them giving you a tour and whatnot, and then going like into like 4 or 5 hour interviews. But the main thing that I found sort of difficult was the way they approached the problem and the way that they made you want to come up with the solution, where I felt like in the tech world, I really had to study my way of like answering that question, like making sure I applied all my technical knowledge of like taking my critical thinking level skills to like the next notch, versus in business where it's more analytics, right? It's more statistical based. Hopefully I'm answering that question. Like I kind of know what they're trying to ask, but it's kind of hard to answer it at the same time without giving too much information away. But yeah, hopefully it was something.
I thought it was great. So with that, that brings us to 7:30, which is the end date for our, or end time for our session. So I'd like to thank all of our panel members and everyone who attended. And while Khushbu was just speaking there, I did a random draw of our current attendees, and the winner of our $50 Amazon gift card tonight is Ricardo Bird. So Ricardo, if you could, yes, congratulations. If you could send an email to my email address that's here on the screen, we'll leave that up for about a minute so you can get that down. If you can send an email address, or an email to my email address saying that you were the winner of our raffle tonight, we'll get that Amazon gift card out to you. So thank you again to everyone that attended and to all of our panel members. I thought this was a great event. It was really enjoyable to just have this conversation about making connections. And I want everyone to go home with the takeaway that, you know, this event only happened because of connections that we had all made in our network. So thanks to everyone again. If anyone has any final words, go for it. Otherwise, thank you.
Thanks, Brett, for setting this up. Such a great interviewer, or like a panel talker, and we'll appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.